All right. I want to talk a little bit about the House Speaker fight. Now, I know I talked a little bit about it 2 weeks ago when we were kind of in the thick of it. Obviously, Kevin McCarthy is Speaker of the House now. And so it seems like everything has kind of settled out, which is fine. There's really not too much that they can get done. I think they are going to try and hold the government hostage over the funding, but we'll talk about that another day if we need to. The thing I actually want to talk to a little bit about is kind of the reaction to the whole speaker fight, either in Washington and kind of in America in general. What's really interesting to me, as someone who studied political science in college, is what we saw on the House floor in terms of all these votes was actually the closest thing that we'll ever get in America to like what a parliamentary system looks like. Now, admittedly, in a parliamentary system, if you can't form a government and you go around to all the blocks and they can't form governments, you have to have new elections. And we obviously didn't do that. Like the whole country didn't get to vote again. But we did see coalition building, right? And this kind of this trade-off. Hey, if you give me this, I'll give you my vote, right? Because the vote in that case is pretty powerful. Now, I don't know how many of those promises are actually going to get fulfilled once all the dust settles. But it's an interesting piece of history for us to examine, because this is actually fairly normal in lots of countries. And for the reactions that I saw in the U.S. amongst people who don't typically follow this a lot, and among the media, they seem totally bewildered by it. And honestly, it's not particularly bewildering, but what it is, it's certainly more unique in American politics than you would typically have, right? Because again, we're used to, the party kind of has its structure, it knows how things are going to go going in, they get power, they set up, and everything works. But I actually think that this is really good for democracy. Now, at the end of the day, do I think that Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy had that much difference between them? No, not really. I think it was mostly a fake fight for attention and cameras and whatever. But I actually think that we should have fights like this more often, because what it allows you to do is create small, very powerful blocks that can essentially control what gets done. And we saw this with the Tea Party, in 2010. We see this actually all the time in democracies around the world. We're going to talk about Israel a little later and how fringes are controlling huge amounts of what gets done in Israel. But at the same time, you could have a small group of Greens controlling what's happening in the English Parliament. And, name your country, name your parliament, doesn't matter. The idea is the same. So, for example, if you had a group of democratic socialists, who most of them are really just social democrats, or progressives, or whatever you want to call them, your happy group of choice, you could have them band together, say like 20 of them, and say, hey, we're not going to give our vote for the speakership unless we get certain demands met, or we're not going to give our vote to important bill X, Y, or Z unless we get what we want. And this would be a really excellent way to force the hand of the rest of the government, because ultimately, unless they're willing to cross party lines or make other sorts of backroom negotiations, which sometimes they will, right? Let's not be naive here, right? There's a lot of corporate giving, and corporations ultimately want stability, so they may allow their servants to cross the aisle and to help out in terms of these battles they would otherwise lose to outside forces. But you have to try, right? You really do have to try, because it works in parliamentary systems. So what I would say, AOC and crew and whoever else, Bernie Sanders, I hope you're watching. I hope you were listening. I hope that you learned something, that you would say, no, we're going to fight. We're going to fight in public. We're going to make a big, we're going to hold things up. We're going to make it uncomfortable for people so that we can get things to the American people, because politics is not about comfort, okay? The whole point of politics is policy. If you're not passing policy, then you're a useless politician, as far as I'm concerned, right? So find a policy that a bunch of people agree with, Medicare for all, a universal basic income, whatever, raising, increasing money that Social Security gets, whatever the issue is, people who will not back down unless you get a promise that it's an affirmative vote, a roll call vote, right? You got to show where people are, right? So the vote knows for sure, and then move it forward. This was a learning opportunity, and I hope the people who had the things learn things. And by the way, for us on the outside and for organizers and such, I hope you learned a lesson too. Hey, people that we select for office, that we endorse, do our best to hold them accountable in saying, when you get into office, this is the bill you need to hold up. This is what you need to demand. And if you put enough people in there who do that, eventually you will create a caucus that has power to or to actually get some of those concessions enacted. And so I really hope that, and I've advocated personally for a parliamentary system in the US. I think it'd be much better. But this is a little taste of it. You can have kind of parliamentary, events occur in a presidential system, and this was an example of that. So I really hope that we see more of this in the future. I think it's actually the best way to break the status quo and to really get stuff done.
Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you liked it, throw a like on it, share with your friends, and subscribe for more of our content. You can also find all of our videos and clips on youtube.com. Just search Let Them Eat Bread and you'll find all of our content. Alright guys, see you next time. Bye for now.